Please join me in welcoming Nina Gospodin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and to have the chance to give a lecture in the Visual Voices lecture series. I titled it Uninsulated Connections. The exhibition I host is called Uninsulated. But before I dive into that, I would also, you've already mentioned a few people that you've thanked. I want to thank some people too. It's also good to lose some of my nervousness and, get into it because I will speak freely. So, later if I get, confused or something, please, mind that. Heuser Art, thank you so much. Working with you is an honor, and that's all I'm going to say because otherwise I might lose it. Fischer Stolz, you have a nice name. Yes, thank you for inviting me. Suzanne Nestory, it has been such an honor to work with you as a gallery director and a pleasure as well. Thank you, Hedy, for helping us setting up the exhibition, but also Tom Slaughton and Alan Keenan, who really helped us with the administration of the whole thing. Advanced Space has offered me materials, so that's very generous, and I really appreciate it. And I don't know, I might forget people, but most of all, the entire art community. So Peoria has welcomed me warmly, and that has been amazing. So maybe if you live in a town, you sometimes don't see like the things that are in front of you. That happens to me in Vienna sometimes. So I came here and I really, really appreciated all the artists I could meet, the events I could go to, and the exhibitions. Okay, so now I'm going to start because I have a lot planned for us today. So fortunately, I don't have to introduce you to my background that much anymore because Heuser has also done some of that. But one main thing I do is I explore boundaries and I try to get insights on the concept of art and concepts of freedom. And I use this looking at it from different perspectives. One is my engineering degree, and I'm still also active in that field in digital marketing. And the other one is my work as an artist. And today, what I want to do is I would like to show you the pattern of inspiration behind my exhibition so that later when you look at it, you will know some things that may not be visible because it's the theoretical work. And I've created this exhibition especially for Peoria. So I knew I was going to hold a lecture and exhibit. So when Heuser told me and I was at the studio, one day and I thought about what am I going to do? I looked at this material. It's called XPS, and these are insulation plates that you can use to insulate your house, for example, to reduce the heat transfer. And they are very common to be applied in sculpture making. Normally, I use them for mold making, but this was an outdoor project with the I Found You collective in Chicago. And there, for terrain exhibitions, I used them to create objects themselves because they were supposed to stand outside and I wanted them to be light. So that material got me thinking. I started with this material and I thought, isn't it interesting? From one perspective, from a technical point of view, its ability to insulate the thermal, to offer thermal insulation helps us immensely because due to missing insulation, we have wasted so much energy in the past and created this global crisis that we have faced now because we burn fossil fuels, and not only in the industry, in industrial processes, but also in our homes, for example. The fact of missing insulation really causes problems. From another point of view, each other, once we are insulated or isolated from each other on a social level, that keeps us from solving the crisis. So insulation has both, it's like two sides. From one side, it's super positive. From the other side, it's exactly, it's an hindrance, an obstacle. So I wanted to explore it further. And I wanted, with this exhibition, explore the qualities that characterize an uninsulated connection. Because, I think that's fine. So here's how I do it. And this is not, an approved method. This is not a scientific method or anything. This is how I structured the topic. And this is how I want to also communicate it to you. So I thought to look at it on 3 layers. One is the object layer. I really like that one because that's the level where you can look at how something works, how it functions. But I also look at it from another way, we'll see. And then I look at at me, from the inside. With the modern, there came this perspective. Nowadays, we can look at something from inside out. I can look at it through my personal lens. And of course, I'm also confronted with the world outside of me because we're many out there, and we are confronted with realities. So very often when we think something from the inside, it looks really clear and easy, and then we're confronted with the realities outside. It gets much more complicated. So there you have institutions, societies, and roles, belief systems, and so on, for example. So let's start with this object layer. I told you I was fascinated by XPS. Well, when I had my first call with Suzanne, she really liked this interdisciplinary aspect and so on, and more than I had imagined. And she motivated me to do something that I hadn't planned before. Because I wanted to also encourage you guys to, if you like something, like go and explore it. So when I thought about the process of how the material is made on a technical level, I thought, why don't I visit a production site where they produce this? And there's actually one production site in Austria where XPS is manufactured, and that is about an hour away from Vienna, and the company is called Auditorium. So I went there, and you can see me in front, all the piles, those are XPS insulation plates. So they produce, this is an illustration by that company, they produce it for its application. So on their level, in the technical process, the application counts. And XPS is still very useful. You can see the pink fields there, everywhere where water is involved. So it's basically a plastic. And you might think, oh no, how can that be positive? Well, if you look at only the technical side, you can argue everywhere where water is involved, it's useful because we don't have anything better. It doesn't perish that easily, and it's water resistant. And if you use renewable resources, even renewable like wood-based substances, need plastic for this application. And then you can look at the mass balance and decide which solution from a technical point of view may be better. So that's why I like this layer very much. So you can also there look at the production process. It's made from polystyrol, and that is used a lot in plastics for dishes like yogurt cups or plastic plates and so on. And you have some others like the color, you have recycled, and you have the flame protection. And you mix all these materials, and then you put it into an extruder, and that heats it up, it melts it, Then you inject CO2 and you put it, you heat it up and then you homogenize it, cool it down and put it through a very, very thin nozzle, and then it blows up and you get these plates. In the past, if you'd say, well, they use CO2, but that's really bad. In the past, they used CFCs, for example. So there you can see how there's a step in the process. So from one gas to the next gas, one was bad for the environment, so they try to improve it. This improvement directs their decisions. Okay, and I'm just talking the technical process. Of course, if we look at, for example, the perspective of money and profit, I could tell also another story. But let's keep it here. And here I also show you some photos of my visit. And this is something I wanted to show you why, even as artists, check it out. I just called them and told them I'm going to go to the States and talk to students, because when will you ever see this material in such a long strip? It's amazing, and you can touch it and it's warm. This is in a different color, but there you can see the exact same material in my studio. And you can also see it as a tool. So that was to create these objects. I used it and you can still see the shape. So before I talked about the technical process, I will switch over to the creative process. I like to also sometimes look at my creative process on this object layer. There you can see some impressions of the objects that you will experience at the gallery. You can see how I created the paper pulp, and there you can see the molds up there as well. So in my art practice, you find tools and artworks. So those both matter to me. So I'll talk a bit more about that. They matter to me, and I look very much at the phenomena that direct my steps, material qualities and colors. And I try not to think of something that's really far away. I try to really think to discover the potential I can see in the materials at hand, in what I work with. So, for example, I saw the next step was for me to work with XPS because I use it. It's there. It's at hand. It's obvious. And through this consequence, that's how I work with the boundary as what exists, and then I shift it step by step. So like a concept for me is like a step in an iteration. And I do that with working with 16 initial shapes. So I started with 16 elemental paintings. At the moment, it doesn't really matter where it came from, but there's a story to that as well. One thing why I like to work with these 16 elements is because I have a set of fixed boundaries that I don't need to negotiate anymore. One reason I work with boundaries or like to do it is, for example, in differential equations, we work with boundary values to get a better understanding of a system. You always look what happens at the boundary, and then you get closer to how something behaves. And also in the Enlightenment, in the critical approach, you try to get the boundaries of something, of whatever you try to understand. What is it capable of and what not, maybe. And so that's why I like it. And I created this model and the elements. So I work with the elements and I create stencils. Here you can see that. You can see these elements. They're in watercolor. So sometimes here in watercolor, they can be really transparent, and that's the technique I use. But in another medium, something that here is hardly seen or visible can behave totally different. This is an impression from an exhibition, and there you see the artworks that are done, but also there to the right, you can see the stencil I used to create them. So the tool that before just had this function to serve the others becomes an artwork itself. So that's also switching of roles that I always go after. These on the left are the watercolors that I call my 16 elemental paintings. So there you can see it. It's nothing big and super robust. It's very simple elements, very something small that I try to push and let it grow and bring it into abundance. Here on the other side, on the right side, you can see 5 shapes that I used in my last exhibition at the Maritime Museum in Spitz, a city near Vienna. And I created the entire exhibition called Workaholics out of those shapes. There's one example. Here on a horse, you can see one of these shapes. It's sitting on the horse, and these shapes were introduced into a historical process. And yeah, I won't go deeper into that, but there at this watercolor, you can see, if you look out, the exact same shape in a different way. And in each medium, it may have different qualities. There it is outside. It's made out of steel and was colored with car color. I don't know what you call that. So there you can see them too. And so you as a viewer can also be led by your perception. So this was the object layer where I looked at the technical process and the creative process. Now I'm going to move on to this perspective from within. When I look from the inside out, from within, and I think, what would be insulation for me? What do I understand as insulated? 2 people came to my mind who created these ideas. One was, or metaphors. One was Wilhelm Reich, a psychologist from back in the day, who used this term of the character armor. And I really, this got stuck. He wrote this character analysis, a book, and there he used the metaphor, the character armor. And why I also liked it when I did the research for this show, and I read about concept of sculpture, for example. In the Third Reich, a sculpture, like the masculinity in a sculpture, was cherished when the men had a big muscle panzer. Well, Wilhelm Reich, interpreted it in a different way. He said if we experience trauma, we bunker up, we create this armor. And Brené Brown is another one who uses a metaphor that I find very strong, the ideological bunkers. So that also inspired me when I thought about it, where, when we sort ourselves into bunkers and, for example, we try to avoid people who are of a different opinion, and then we create these walls between us. You know, that can also be something. And when we as individuals lose our connection. On the other hand, I thought, okay, well, if this is something that reminds me of insulation, what would be uninsulated? And there I thought, well, what about some artists? And artist as a soulful and active individual that tries to open something. And I cannot introduce all of them, but I will introduce some of them. I try to find people who are from either Germany, where I'm from, or Austria, where I work. One is Josef Beuys, and he works with the term of insulation or insulator himself. He's known for terms like the extended definition of art, also erweiterter Kunstbegriff, soziale Plastik, social sculpture, or Jeder Mensch ist ein Künstler. Everyone is an artist. He was a professor too at the academy in Düsseldorf, and he dropped the entrance exam and just said, you know what, everybody's an artist. Come in. They freaked out. He was really serious about it. And so he also understood art as a concept that should transform society. And well, he made up this myth about insulation, and he also used materials, fat and felt to be specific, also technical materials, if you so to say, and introduced them to art. And there you can see very important works, the chair with fat, and behind it, the fat corner. And this fat, so I used XPS and he uses fat. For him, fat symbolizes something like a heat process. That when you look at the corner and the fat goes really smooth into this corner, and somehow it protects it. And it may also kind of help it. That's for sure. But if nothing moves, if it stays rigid, if the concept becomes rigid, then then the fat becomes crystalline too. And so for him, it symbolizes the heat to getting something into movement. He was always moved by ideas of transformation and art. And so to get something moving, to melt, and so to open up what has become crystalline. And I think 2 points that I found very important concerning him, where one is that fat softens the edges and thus the ideologies. I said that because I was referring to Brené Brown. And so it's a social process that arises from the individuals themselves. So it's not the individuals that serve, but he wanted to get the individuals into the active. The next person, I don't know if you know her, is a painter, Maria Lasnik. She's from Austria too. She lived in New York City and in Paris as well. And so what she did was, what is so special about her is she listened to herself, to the inside, and see what opens up. And through this, the outside distorts. And she called this body awareness paintings. She would only paint what she feels, and she differentiated different approaches. She often laid down at the studio, and then she would just paint the limbs that she can feel, for example. Or when she, for example, touched feminism as a topic, and she used certain elements, like, for example, a cooking pan, she would paint the cooking pan, but her body parts attached to it only in a way she felt them. And she was very consequent about it. So I had to think of her as well. And she is also, so she felt like, for example, to paint something as it's realistic or how it's felt, or paint a leg like a stick or a thread or a sausage, things like this. She was really open. And she also took care of color a lot. Color mattered to her. One artist from Austria who is also really engaged in color is Ingo Nussbaumer. He studies it in depth. And when you become more aware of color and its phenomena, you can also open up about it. This illustration, for example, is just there to see, like, even with an RGB color circle, you can think about how much red is in a green, or is there any? Or can you see the transformation from blue to green? Is there a clear cut or not? Or how do we perceive it? How do we explain it? And how do we perceive it? He uses these thoughts and experiments to feed his other practices. So he's a painter, he creates light installations, and he does philosophical writings. One installation that I particularly wanted to show to you is the Rainbow's Missing Colors in Frankfurt at the Romantic Museum. And there he did something. He created 2 light spectra. It's the rainbow spectra and its complementary spectrum. And I was actually not aware that there are 2 spectra because I didn't really think about it. So I learned the physics on how to calculate light that goes through a prism and the angles. And I learned about Newton and his theory and so on, but I never looked at the phenomena. So when we say all the colors in the rainbow, most people are just talking about this rainbow spectrum, but it's missing an entire complementary spectrum. On the left, you can see how they are created. I'll just move over. There, you can see the light coming through, and then there's an obstacle. This is the light, and that's created through the obstacle. And then here you have the darkness, and then some light gets through. So this is how you make this one. And it's very big. So they're about 1 meter the size. So it's quite sensational because no one has ever done it in that scale to put them together and show it to the people. And it's just through the sunlight. So if it's raining, you can't unfortunately see it. Yeah, Heuser got to see it. Yes. And he continued to work with these 2 spectra. There you have the rainbow, and there you have the complementary spectrum. But he started to work with different backgrounds, all in spectral lights and different colors. And he discovered 6 other spectra, which he called the irregular spectra. And what he found out, I mean, the main point is that if you look at all these 8 spectra and this system, you see how the roles of each element changes. So it's not that fixed as it seems. Every color can be, in one system, a primary color, and in another one, it's a secondary color. And every color can take on the roles of the others. And only if they can exist in abundance, they can find out this whole potential that's in them. If you don't see the whole thing, if you don't see the experience it, it's not possible. Or at least we as spectators don't know about it. But maybe, I found it also interesting. For me, it inspired me. One last artist I want to also mention in this context is from the I Found You collective. I could have, introduced you to any of us because the group is amazing. But there are 2 reasons why I introduce Marisa in this lecture. First one is she's exhibiting with her Uruguayan collective at the Peoria Art Guild right now. So maybe, this is a good introduction, and then you can explore more of her work. And the other reason is that there's a difference to all the other artists I've talked to you about before. First of all, she's the youngest, but also let's look at what she does. So she does fine art, yes, but she also runs a business that connects me with her. She sells tractors and agriculture materials. So in the first floor of the building, she has her team of engineers, and they sell agriculture equipment. In the second floor, she has her studio. And it interchanges. So she also is the mother of 3 children. And that's why you can meet her in all these different roles. Like she could be there as a business owner, giving a tour through her artist studio. Or maybe she is in a team meeting while her daughter gives a tour through her artist studio. You know what I mean? I mean, she's not fixed to one thing or one role. She discovers all these different ones, and she also interweaves them. So you can see this here at the shop downstairs. You can see also some painting of her. And she also invites the public. So she invites the community, fathers, mothers, children, friends, people, to join. They have workshops and they do stuff together, and they see the business side and they see the artist side. So let's have a look at the creative connections again. I started with the object layer.
the technical and the creative process. And then I looked at installation from within, from the inside. And now I would like to have a look at installation from the outside. Because from this perspective, it all looks a little bit different. There are things out there that I cannot control. And there are other factors that need to be considered.
And the realities we're faced with. And this is a memory from my childhood because I'm from Germany. And that was an experience that got stuck when I first saw our bunker. And I called this slide the bunker and the Holy Ghost field because that's exactly the location where the bunker is located in Hamburg, a city in northern Germany. And the Holy Ghost field is actually a big parking lot. For me, it's big. For you, it's maybe normal size. But I always found that remarkable that we call it the Holy Ghost field. Because for me, this building stood for a complete loss of spirituality, of something that connects us, that goes beyond the individual and connects us as a group, as a community. And so that's why I had to think of it so much. And sometimes people ask me about why I paint the way I do. And this definitely is a reason of why I paint in geometry. I can't imagine to talk about these issues with my background in any other way, because that's the form, that's the shape I was confronted with, and also like these thick walls and everything. So the isolated field. Yeah, and so here when we have to serve a system, is lost. It's just there to work, to function into the system, and then also these ideological bunkers that we can create are good because they can help us. They can help the system to use us, to work into it, to just function within something, to act according to rules and norms. And what I found remarkable is, I think, is that it's unstable. It becomes unstable. If a system is afraid of an individual that is free and self-determined, if that challenges it, then the individual has to become something like a functioning gear or functioning like a tool. And that's why, I work with tools and works. So both elements of a system and also like the work, the outcome. And that's also why I think I don't ask how do we function in society. I always ask myself how to be free in society and how to be creative in society, because creativity shifts borders. That's what it does. In Vienna, where I now live, we don't have the Holy Ghost field parking lot. We have the Stephansdom, the cathedral, and that's something like a spiritual center. There are others too, so I don't want to reduce or just mention Christianity, but I wanted to bring you something from the city where I live, and also because because it's a remarkable figure. Of these shrine Madonna figures, only 65 are left. There existed many in the medieval time. We know that from poems and songs. And what I like about it is this Madonna with a golden cloak, or with this cloak, is the Madonna of Mercy, and she opens up. And what happens? It's a wooden cloak. When you open her up, to the left, that's the one in Vienna, you have the women, to the right you have the men, and in the middle you have the Holy Trinity. So when you open her up, she offers you the world and the universe and everything. through this act, and she embraces everything, and you, through opening her, kind of also embraces everything. So this figure carries in it, it has the protective cloak that reminded me of insulation, that has to be opened to open the world. And one of them is in Vienna, so if you come, you know. And so this brings me to the I Found You collective, and I think what we do is, we open the protective cloak together. We open up to each other, and we open up also to the world through our practices and through interweaving our practices. That photo was taken in Mannheim. To the left, you can see Clark Valentine. Then that's me. In the middle, that's Marisa Benotti, Heather Bremeyer, and James Jaxa. And there we did a residency together. James, for example, he works with concepts of joy, and he's always drawn to these places where you do after work. So first you go to work and you do your office job, and then you meet and go to the club and you dance, and no matter who you are, you all meet and celebrate together. You're joyful together, and that's what he puts into his paintings and objects and installations. Clark Valentine is really engaged with ideas of spirituality, and he looks at it through his drawings that are where especially the mark-making process interests him. He creates lines, and like in a walking meditation where you are really aware of every movement, he's really aware of every gesture. And Heather is an amazing installation artist who has really influenced us and inspired us. I mean, I remember being in Mannheim, and I had a small room where I could work but also sleep. And through the window, you could see into the garden where she created a wooden sculpture out of of branches. Some of them were sturdy, but others were just thin branches. And she built it up and up and up like a tower and tried to see how far. Her benchmark was, I want to climb it. So she would drill something and then try to climb it, and then maybe it wasn't stable enough, and then she would adapt it. So when I woke up, I could look out of the window and see her work at 7 a.m. So that's Heather. My questions in the collective are, how can we be creative across borders? And how can we realize ideas together? Because I spoke about our crisis before. I think that's something I find so crucial. How can we realize together? How can we open up and realize together? Because I said I said we, but we today means something different. I think we need to understand each other as a global community and find true connection. So we think about that, and I think about that when I work with I Found You. And how can I explore myself and you in the other's field? So how can my works, for example, take on a new role? How can I take on a new role by entering, for example, into Heather's field? So that's something I explore in my collective practice with I Found You Collective. And also my artworks, how they can find new applications and new context. For example, this is an installation we did in Uruguay last year. It was exhibited for, I think, almost a year in the end. This was us at King's College, where we presented a photographic practice. At the Peoria Art Guild, of course. Thank you so much for supporting us. And that's, also, it's also fun to be in a collective because you can goof around. Okay, thank you.